Hendricks and Nix were in Game 5 when O.J. started that fateful drive. His four-way hazard lights were blinking, and no one knew what the juice was thinking.
I've been to Reno, Chicago, Fargo, Minnesota, Buffalo, Toronto, Winslow, Sarasota, Wichita, Tulsa, Ottawa, Oklahoma, Tampa, Panama, Mattawa, La Paloma, Bangor, Baltimore, Salvador, Amarillo, Tocopilla, Barranquilla, and Padilla. I'm a killer. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Crossed the desert bare, man. I breathe the mountain air, man. I've traveled, I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere.
This is Oversight Live, your advocate for good governance. We're putting the site back in. Oversight. Here's the watcher on the wall, your host, Ben Carpenter.
Good evening, Alaskans. Welcome to Oversight Live. I am Ben Carpenter. I am your host for this evening. Happy post-Memorial Day weekend celebration. I hope you had good weather and were able to get out, enjoy family, and remember the reason for the season. Welcome to Oversight Live. We are in transition a little bit here on Oversight Live since the legislative session, I say the normally scheduled legislative session has come to an end. There is a special session in play. Oversight Live is to bring you the meetings that happen so that you understand what's going on in our legislature. There was one meeting that occurred today, and it was in Anchorage by House Finance, which is where the governor's bills are that were part of the call. Anyway, so there is a road. It isn't in Juneau. There's a road to Anchorage, so you can get to and watch in the very small room that they have for the meeting, which is recorded and broadcast as well. So your argument for not showing up is not that there isn't a road there. It's for some other reason, right? I think there were empty seats. I'm just saying. If we put the legislature on the road system, I suspect that there would be empty seats in the committee meetings. I'm just saying. Be a little bit playful here. Participating in self-government is something that is challenging, regardless of whether it's in Juneau or whether it's in Anchorage. But that being said, because it is far away, we're going to do our best to bring the important things to you. If you have questions during this broadcast, and we're broadcasting on X, YouTube, and Facebook, just chat it in your window, and I'll get the messages, and I'll do my best to answer questions as we go. If you're watching the recording, you can send me email, producer@oversightlive.com, and I'll do my best to answer your question. And don't be surprised if I use your question on air, because if you've got that question, it's likely that there are many other people that have the same question. So, all right, we're going to try to have some fun. I'm going to step back a little bit. We have presented the briefings that have been given to the legislature by the legislature's paid consultant, Gaffney Klein. That is, again, what happened in House Finance today. We're not going to go there. I told you last week that we would try to bring some words from the Sustainable Energy Conference, and I have been successful in getting the links to the meetings, and we're going to watch a few short speeches and then watch a couple presentations where there's a discussion. I should say presentation is a discussion on a couple of topics. One of them is energy innovation, and another one is artificial intelligence. And I think both of those are pertinent to economic development in Alaska and around the world. And they're both definitely relevant to what's happening in Alaska right now. So we're going to jump into that and have that discussion. Rick asks, what happened today? Yeah, it wasn't, it was just an information session where Gaffney Klein, Nick Fulford from Gaffney Klein was presenting to the House Finance team. They're in Anchorage at the LIO and giving the briefing that he's given to other committees and questions from people getting up to speed on what other committees have taken time to get up to speed on. So it's good that the House Finance team is working as soon and as well as they are now. Tomorrow we should have the Senate Finance team. Maybe they're starting out with the same briefing. I don't know. Maybe not. Anyhow, that's what happened in the legislature. So we're going to mix things up just a little bit here. And first up, we're going to hear from two individuals. One of them is Brendan Duvall from Glen Farms, the CEO of Glen Farm. Introductory remarks last Tuesday. And then we will hear from Governor Dunleavy's introductory remarks. And then we'll hear from a panel that includes the U.S. Department of Energy on innovation and impacts to Alaska. And then there is a second panel that is a number of people that are going to be talking about artificial intelligence. And we'll do some introductions here so you understand who's talking, and then we'll get on to the subject matter. So let's cue this up and get going. All right. Go, Nancy.
And Duvall, if he could come to the stage, please.
Well, thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and welcome to the Alaska Sustainable Energy Conference. This is my second time talking to you. Last year, I felt like a guest. Here, I feel like I'm part of the family. I know it takes a little longer to be a true Alaskan than 1 year, but we're truly honored to be the lead sponsor of this event. It represents the amazing opportunity here in Alaska. The approach that the governor has taken and the whole energy community here of all of the above. In the growth of energy needs around the world, we need every type of energy. In particular, we need more of what Alaska has, which is gas, reliable, predictable gas. We need more gas down here in the Cook Inlet area, and we need to get LNG, liquefied natural gas, around the world. Glen Farm now has been the lead developer of Alaska LNG for at least a year now, and I'll be sitting with the governor on Thursday to give you more updates. But in the meantime, over the last year, we've let out the bulk of the construction, the equipment supply, the pipe. We've signed 13 million tons of LNG reservations. We've got ready to sign local offtake agreements to put the project into final investment decision. We've run a private financing process that's ready to go through the last stages now. And so the Alaska LNG project, in particular, phase one pipeline, is in a fantastic position to start delivering gas in 2029. And I can confidently say, with a little bit of push here from everyone, and maybe a little bit of help in Juneau, we're going to get this over the line very soon. I just want to say thank you to a lot of the guests that have come. We had a mini sponsor stakeholder event yesterday, and we had people in that are part of our project who are investors, putting in their time, effort, money from Germany, Italy, Greece. We had people from Taiwan, Japan, Korea, and many states in the lower 48, and including a lot of our local partners here who are contractors, service providers as well. And I was thoroughly impressed at how much they enjoyed going down to the Kenai Peninsula. Mayor Machiki hosted us there. They went around the site. We came back here, had a dinner, had a round table with Secretary Burgum. And it reinforced to them how supportive this state is of a project of this scale. Remember, this is the largest energy infrastructure project ever undertaken in the Americas, which means it's the largest financing. And to stand in front of you and tell you confidently that we're going to get this done. A year ago, I guess it might have been some hope. Now we're moving into a fact. So this is not an if, it's a when we can close out some of the finishing touches of the pipeline. And I want to put a special thank you to Governor Dunleavy, who has fought harder than anybody you could imagine in this room, on behalf of the project, on behalf of you in Alaska, and his support for the pipeline with us has been unwielding. I just want to give him a clap for that. Thank you, sir. And then more broadly, the overall administration in DC, the members of cabinet, all the way up to President Trump, a project like this needs alignment from the municipalities, from the boroughs, to the state, to the feds, the cabinet level, and this project has that. And that's one reason I took the project on behalf of Glenfarne to deliver it, is for that. So we're going to get gas in 2029. I'll let the Lieutenant Governor finish off introducing the Governor, and thank you very much. Enjoy the conference.
Thank you, Brandon. I am like...
Okay, Fairbanks, I'm sure that it was just an oversight. I'm sure that he cares about a spur line and getting gas to the interior, and it's not just all about South Central Alaska like it usually is. This is just a little dig there for you interior folks. We haven't forgotten about the, I have not forgotten about the spur line, and I'm sure he has not either. I'm confident in that. Okay, well, let me fast forward here just a couple brief minutes, and we'll get to.
You just hop up on the stage, but it was a little high this time. Anyway, I want to welcome you all here today in Alaska. It's been 5 years since we started the first conference, and the world is continually changing. When we first started this conference, we had the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which threw energy security, energy concepts, decades-old systems up in the air. And the ensuing 5 years is added to that chaos. And so like the rest of you, we in Alaska are trying to figure out what the future is going to look like. We do know it's going to be energy. We do know it's going to be reliable energy. We were hoping, and we still hope, it's going to be cheap energy. But I think what's also bubbling to the top is energy security. What does that mean? It's really energy assurity. Are we going to get the energy that we contracted for? Are we going to get the energy that we expect that we were going to get? And as we've seen now with the events in the Persian Gulf and across the world, that's called into question. So the conversations I'm sure a lot of you are having is, what is the next day going to look like? What is next week going to look like? What's next month going to look like? And that's a bit unsettling. If you're a sovereign, if you're a business, if you're an entity that relies on energy, which most do, you're wondering where your next tanker of oil is going to come from, where your next shipment of gas is going to come from. Do we return to coal, which quite frankly is not a bad idea? What do we do with nuclear? Nuclear, has had a revival as well as other energy sources. So really the issues before us are, we have an energy mix that works in many locales. The question is, are we going to have a surety of that energy? Are we going to be able to once again contract and expect a tanker or a shipment to arrive where it should arrive on the time it should arrive, in the place it should arrive? That's changed right now. I think it was a week and a half ago, I think the last tanker, oil tanker from the Straits made it into Long Beach, California. And when you think if that's the last, what's between then and February, what's between May, I think it was first week of May, second week of May, and February 20, I think it was 26th or something when the war started. So that's what Alaska is all about. And that's why I hope a lot of you have come here to understand Alaska. We have a lot of local Alaskans here too that are going to participate in a number of sectionals, which I think is fantastic, because Alaska isn't just oil, even though we're having a tremendous oil renaissance. I think some of you have seen the Financial Times article that came out a couple days ago with a subheading that Alaska is the hottest place on the planet to invest. I think we are, and I think we should be for a whole host of reasons. The support from the federal government, the Trump administration, is huge. As I always say, it's one thing I love about this president and his secretaries and his cabinet is when they say they're going to do something, they do it. And when it comes to Alaska, they're absolutely doing it. I spent a couple days with the Secretary Burgum up on where there's going to be a new road to a mining district, a 200-mile road. At the same time, we got transferred to us, the state of Alaska, 1.4 million acres from the federal government. That was owed to us since statehood in 1959. And so when the Trump administration says they're going to do something, they do it. And when the state of Alaska says it's going to do something, we absolutely want to do it. And so we want to thank all of you that have come up and have been part of this oil renaissance. I was speaking to my Department of Natural Resources Commissioner not too long ago, and I said, what does it look like? We're at 495 barrels roughly today. He said, if everything works out and there's no problems, we will probably be looking at over 900,000 barrels here in the next 10 to 12 years. That's phenomenal for a sovereign, a region such as Alaska. We were the giant for North America. We were at 2 million barrels at one time back in the early 90s and late 80s. And people thought Alaska was done for a whole host of reasons. We never did. We knew we had the resource. And that's, I guess, the takeaway for a lot of us policymakers. It's not about oftentimes the resource. It's more about the policy to access the resource, to deliver the resource, to contract the resource. And that, too, is in Alaska's favor right now. Again, thanks to the federal government, thanks to what we're doing here in the state of Alaska, but also thanks to the risk-taking of a number of you that have come to Alaska to take a look at Alaska. Yes, Alaska's at the top of the world. Yes, Alaska's far away from a lot of markets. Yes, it's a small population, but when you look at Alaska today especially, in which we can ship gas and oil to our friends in Asia, for example, Tokyo, 8 to 9 days away by shipping, straight shot, no contested waters, no straits to go through, no foreign actors to intervene. And then we've done this before. We pioneered LNG export in the world in the late 1960s, 69. We were the first to deliver reliable cargoes of LNG to Japan for almost 50 years. We were the ones that pioneered LNG export. We were the ones that built the Trans-Alaska oil pipeline that people thought never could be built. You're never going to be able to get it over those mountains, under those rivers, by those glaciers. Well, we did it, and we did it in almost a little over 2 years, I believe. And that oil pipeline has been transporting billions and billions and billions of barrels of oil that people thought would long be over, that the pipeline would be retired. Pipeline's going to see a new life probably for another 50 years because of folks that take risks here in Alaska. Brendan came up and talked about our gas project. Last year, we talked about the concept. This year, we're talking about the execution steps in that gas project. That project will be the largest on the face of the earth, probably the largest in terms of investment ever. It'll certainly be the largest project in the Arctic ever, the largest probably in the Pacific. And that project will deliver gas to our Asian allies, again, 50, 60, 70 years. With the ancillary gas that's being discovered on the slope along with oil, the life expectancy, the lifespan, the timeline for that pipeline is even further. It's going out even further. And so gas and oil, huge in Alaska. What about renewables? What about wind? What about solar? 100%, absolutely. BOEM has a study in which they show that Alaska can potentially produce about 3.6. I say 3.6. I've been corrected sometimes by some of my folks to say 3.8, but 3.6 gigawatt, 3,600 gigawatts of renewable power. 3,600 gigawatts of renewable power. Whether it's tidal, whether it's geothermal, whether it's onshore wind, offshore wind, whether it's solar. We have solar above the Arctic Circle, and people probably laugh at that. I'm probably the only governor in the United States that has solar panels on his property, 50 solar panels. And in the month of December, I'm producing electricity. In the month of February and March, I have some of the best months of the year here in Alaska. So what we have to offer, along with our carbon storage, our carbon offsets, you name it, here in Alaska, is tremendous. And so if you're an investor, then you're looking at Alaska, you got to look at this as a greenfield operation to some extent, but the upside, I believe, is tremendous with the anticipation and the projects that we have coming online. And so a lot of you may want to get in on the ground floor, as they say, because I think Alaska is going to be the hottest place for a whole host of investment. I could go on and on and on. You're going to have a number of fantastic sectionals and panels over the next couple of days. I hope you take away, as a former teacher, I always say to my staff at the end of the day, what'd you learn? What'd you get out of this day? What'd you get out of this meeting? And I think it's important that you take away things. It's going to help you in your decision-making, you in your business, you in your entity's activities when you come to these conferences. And so we're going to try and make sure that this conference was worth your trip up here, worth your while, worth your time.
Okay, there we've heard the vision, and he's leading into the next next panel here, which we'll queue up here in just a second. Wanted to check in with you all. Craig says the most discouraging thing to me about the gas project is that it seems like a significant portion of our population are overly concerned about the project risks and not about the do nothing risk. We don't talk about the risk of inaction, the opportunity cost of doing nothing, right? We don't ever talk about that. High cost gas is a thing that we're going to have to get used to unless we have an alternative like a pipeline that would help lower the cost of gas. The other alternatives to the pipeline, if you're thinking about it in terms of alternatives, is to import LNG or to find more of it in Cook Inlet. For LNG, that's it. Find it locally, import it from somewhere else on the globe. And both of those options are more expensive. Those just continue to increase in costs going forward. They don't have any sort of hope or plan attached to them where you're going to see a reduction in the cost of energy over time. Both of those will continue to grow. The pipeline with the export facility is the only one that has any hope of lowering the cost of gas for us. If we don't do that, the cost of energy just goes up for us. That's it. Both gas and electricity. Many people don't understand that we generate a lot of our electricity from natural gas. We have natural gas burning, firing generators that produce the electricity, right? If you don't have that, then you've got coal or you've got heating oil fired, the diesel generators, right? Those are our options. I like the push to renewables to a certain extent. I would love to see geothermal. I would love to see more hydro. Those are all things that pay off in the end. We're benefiting from them now, but many of those projects are like 10 years away if you're going to talk about permitting, right? Get started now. I mean, we shut down the Susitna-Watana Dam in the Walker administration. If we had continued that, we'd be at the point now where we're finishing the 10 or 12 years of permitting, and the project would be ready to get started here soon. Then the question would be financing. How are we going to pay for it? That's the short-sightedness we've had over time. So yeah, we don't talk about the risk of doing nothing. We just assume that things are going to be the way they are. Yeah, I think there are high hopes from some people that we're going to get this done and over across the finish line. I think the exact opposite, the flip side of that coin, is that there are people who do not want to see this go forward because they do not want Dunleavy to get a win, Trump to get a win. They do not want to see anything that would encourage people to turn out and vote for conservatives or Republicans because they want power. There's like this group of people in the state that really would like to see a Democrat governor get elected in November, and you've got what amounts to a Democrat majority legislature in each house. So they're salivating that could be the thing that could happen. So why would they give Republicans in the state a win by allowing a pipeline to go forward? I have heard that. It's really frustrating. Anyway, let's get forward to the actual conversation here on energy innovation. And that starts here just in a couple of minutes. I'm going to get it queued up here so we know who's actually talking. Should be right about there.
Helping shape the future of American energy innovation, infrastructure, technology, including right here in Alaska. Audrey Robertson serves as Assistant Secretary of Energy, leading the Office of Critical Minerals and Energy Innovation and overseeing one of the nation's largest energy R&D portfolios. Before joining the Department of Energy, she built a career in energy investment, infrastructure, and innovation, including co-founding Franklin Mountain Energy and advancing projects in battery storage, geothermal, nuclear, and utility-scale solar development. Joining her today is Judd Verdon, Director of the National Laboratory of the Rockies, whose career is focused on accelerating applied energy research, grid modernization, energy storage, and strategic partnerships between government, industry, and the national laboratory system. Together, they bring perspectives from both public leadership and scientific innovation at a pivotal moment, and it is a pivotal moment for the future of energy development. So please join me in welcoming these two great people to the stage for a nice conversation.
We introduced them to some nice, cool Alaskan weather this May. Can you believe it's the end of May and the buds on the trees are only now starting to pop out? At least in South Central Alaska here.
Thank you so much, Governor.
Good seeing you again.
Wonderful to see you again.
And just anywhere you want to see your guys. Thanks for coming up. Just gonna flick those on.
I feel like
Like anywhere else and any other time, so much to talk about and not enough time to do it, right? So we'll do the best we can. But anyway, thanks for coming to Alaska. Thanks for what you're doing for the country and for all of us. And you know, just a couple things we want to talk about, and you can give us your thoughts on. So, first time to Alaska? Nope. First time to Alaska?
No way.
See that? These are regulars. And as Brendan said, if you come up a couple more times, we'll give you a citizenship, Alaska citizenship. We used to sell those in the tourist stores years ago, and a passport too. Anyway, so thanks for coming. So, Assistant Secretary Robertson, what is the Department of Energy's Office of Critical Minerals and Energy Innovation doing that will be benefits to Alaskans that you are most excited about?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting us. Thank you for including me personally and our office to come up here and participate in the sustainability conference, because to us, sustainability means enduring. And there are so many important components of energy that provide enduring communities, enduring businesses, and as you and I have discussed many times before, the very success of any community is based on its energy security and its predictability. And Alaska has such a wide range of electricity prices, as well as communities. So my office is a new office. If you haven't heard of it before, it's because it didn't exist until probably 6 months ago. And we incorporated all of the renewable, is this weird sounding to you guys? No?
Yes.
Okay. All right, it's echoing to me. We incorporated what was formerly the Office of Renewable Energy. So we oversee the nation's portfolio of solar, wind, hydrogen, hydrokinetics, hydropower, transportation. But we also incorporated a couple different components that were in different areas of the department. Specifically, we looked at the entire mining supply chain, which after the Bureau of Mines was closed about 30 years ago in March, there were different parts of the Bureau of Mines that got spread around. We decided that to take and execute on the president's bold mission of bringing back the supply chain to America, of bringing back the ability to be resource independent in a nation that is blessed with resources, in a state that is doubly blessed in resources here in Alaska. We had to put it in one office. And so everything from mining and mining innovation to refining, processing, metals, magnets, and batteries also fall within our office. Now, when you take renewables and you take mining and metals, the last component of our office is really the application of those innovations for everyday Americans. So we work very closely across the state of Alaska with a variety of different communities in different ways to support weatherization assistance, to help Alaskan rural communities put in, especially, it makes a lot of economic sense to put in solar and batteries in different parts of Alaska, especially when the other option would be flying in diesel, for example. That doesn't make sense. So we are trying to use numbers and science to help communities around Alaska live their best lives, to have this energy sustainability and security that most communities in the lower 48 enjoy all the time, that Alaskans deserve and should be enjoying. Especially your hydropower network is outstanding. So it's a privilege for me to lead this office that crosses into so many different areas of Alaska, and happy to be here and talk about any of those.
Well, we're glad you're here. And, you reminded me of what Secretary Burgum and Secretary Wright said last year, in which there was discussions about, renewable transformation, transitions, all of this. And they basically said, it really comes down to the cost of kilowatt. For the resident, for the business, what produces the least in terms of cost per kilowatt and can deliver reliability? And I think that's the goal. And I'm really very excited about what you guys are doing in that program now.
And Alaskans had better, it's important that they're paying attention to this conversation. Most Alaskans aren't even going to see this unless they catch the recording, right? I can't tell you how many conversations that I've heard or been part of where people are shocked or upset because of the cost, the rising cost of their electricity bill. I've heard it time and again. I'm not using any more electricity than I did last year, but my bill is significantly more than it was last year. What is going on? Why am I having to pay more? And all sorts of things start coming out of their mouth on who's responsible and blah, 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 right? Most of it just ignorant of the realities here. High cost of gas. That's exactly why much of this price is going up, along with, just general inflation from a few years ago. But anyway, point is, we've got to have some forward thinking, some risk taking, and some determination to generate more electrons if we want to see the cost of our electricity come down.
I think if we adhere to that, we don't find ourselves in a situation like we did maybe the last couple of years, and that is choosing one source over another, not necessarily because of cost, but just because of politics. So
you're 100% right. On ADAC, it's $1.74, and on Kodiak, it's 14 cents.
Right.
And it's like there's a huge discrepancy around how Alaskans both consume and pay for it and derive energy, but also it's a limiting factor to growth.
Right.
To process critical minerals, to have industries that consume energy and power, you have to have affordable, reliable, and secure energy and power.
Director Verdon, what does NLR bring to the state as a DOE national lab from your perspective?
Yeah, can you hear me? It's good. Yeah, I am. First of all, thank you for letting me be on stage with you too. This is quite an honor. I've spent my entire career in the national lab system because I just fundamentally believe that R&D, and especially applied R&D, is the missing key to really driving towards what the Assistant Secretary said, and you said affordable energy. It has to compete in the marketplace. And if you're not familiar with the national labs, there's 17 national labs. They're often called the crown jewels. They are a differentiator for us. And I also believe any state that has a national lab in them is blessed, and we have the obligation to help the state and the region, in all of its energy challenges. And so I do want to say one thing. The National Lab of the Rockies is, formerly the National Renewable Energy Lab, and before that it was the Solar Energy Research Institute. So we went through a name change with the Department of Energy. I and the leadership team was 100% supportive of that name change. If you look at what we did in solar over the last 50 years, we transformed the world in terms of performance and cost of solar energy. The National Renewable Energy Lab did that. The Solar Research Institute did that. We transformed all renewable energies. But when you look at where the lab is at today, it is broader than that. We are looking at critical minerals. We're looking at data centers. We're looking at energy security. Every other national lab has a name that is location or regionally based. So the National Lab of the Rockies, thank you. It's the Department of Energy's lab. We were very happy to make that change, and I want to believe the Rockies go all the way up into Alaska. I'm not sure about that, but I'm going to say thank you. I'm going to say that. We're 3,000 people strong. in Golden, Colorado. We look at everything from data center efficiency. We do large-scale device testing of batteries and new data centers. We are very strong in critical minerals work, from the materials all the way through to the processing. And in Alaska, we have about 35 people up in Fairbanks. We were up there yesterday. Fantastic group of people, Alaskans. Alaska has an innovative spirit that you don't find anyplace else. Lots of ideas. We grew out of the Cold Climate Housing Research Center. They've been here about 20 years working on Alaska-specific activities. We ran the numbers. We have 177 distinct interactions across 83 communities in Alaska, out in remote villages. We have a map on the wall that shows where we have gone and made a difference, whether it's housing or analyzing the electric grid or looking at, microgrids across, everything from remote communities to maybe even critical minerals. So a long history. What my hope is, as a national lab for the Department of Energy, Assistant Secretary Robertson is our steward of the National Lab of the Rockies, is that we deliver impact here. I would love to see more strategy. There's a lot of projects. I would love to see us all work together to address what you said. What are the innovations that are needed to be accelerated, would make a difference with a cost that makes a real impact? And I'll say one last thing. In all our interactions, whether it's critical minerals or mining or utilities, the answer is the same. We need to innovate faster, needs to get through that valley of death faster, and we need a place like national labs and partnerships with the University of Alaska at Fairbanks to test and validate independently to de-risk technologies. It's the de-risking that will help the investors decide what's the best option, how to put it into system, and how to have it make a difference for the people in Alaska and the US.
Well, and I'm glad you're here on the ground, because a lot of times in trying to describe Alaska to people who've never been here, it's very difficult to do that, to get their arms around the vastness of the state, the fact that we have about 228 communities that are off the road system. We're the only state in the country that has that. And the contradictions, real quick, the contradictions that are part of Alaska, that is massive amounts of oil, massive amounts of gas, massive amounts of hydro, massive amounts of renewable, but small populations oftentimes isolated. And so, for example, what's happening now, which is unfortunate for especially our smaller communities, is they contract for diesel and fuel in the spring every year to meet the barges that will come in so they can deliver in the fall for the remainder of that fall, winter, and spring. Well, we know what's happening now with the cost of energy. So they're unfortunately, in some cases, going to be contracting at a very high price. This is why in Alaska, when we talk about renewables, it's not a political thing. It's really, how do you put into place infrastructure in which you don't have to fly fuel in, or you have to barge fuel in at an ever higher cost? So a community that I lived in, Kotzebue, which is north of the Arctic Circle, they were pioneers in wind. Those windmills work in the wintertime, and they were pioneers in wind. They're now adding solar panels. But the point I'm trying to make is the work that you do is going to be able to help us understand what is the best mix for our communities. So again, we can achieve that lowest cost for everybody and that reliability for everybody. So this will be a question for both of you guys. What are the thorniest issues you are tackling around shoring up domestic critical mineral supply chains? And how can business and state governments be most helpful working with you on critical minerals?
There's a lot of thorny issues as it relates to critical minerals, because effectively the last 30 years, we have not been doing it. We have been closing down mines. We've been putting up barriers to processing and material science. And so working with state governments, working with permitting authorities to expedite permits. Alaska knows this story well. I think the average time to get a mine permitted is 15 years, 18 years. That's crazy. No business can plan on an 18-year cycle, yet alone 18 months. That's just not how business works, the world works. Things change too quickly. So our approach, and Dr. Verdon said it perfectly, is to use innovation to allow us not to compete by doing the things we used to do. We're not going to play by the rules that we established in the 50s around how you mine, how you are a steward of the environment, how you process, refine, make metals, and then make things. It's going to be a whole new type of mining and processing. So the thorny issues are trying to get regulatory bodies to execute at the same high standards of protecting communities and the environment, doing their job to ensure that these mining projects or refining projects are creating value to the community and not harming the community. But with technology, we're doing that better than ever to get those regulatory bodies and that permitting sped up so that industry can happen. A place like Alaska has 95% of the critical minerals designated by the Department of the Interior. You have the largest graphite deposit, definitely in North America, maybe top 2 or 3 in the world. You're leaders in zinc, in copper, in tungsten, in antimony. Alaska could lead, not just lead the country, but lead the world in the production of things like these materials, which are necessary for AI, which are necessary for every part of our modern world. But we have to be able to permit. We have to be able to process. To do that, you need energy. So it's the intersection of all of those difficult issues around reconciling with the last 30 years of not doing this and addressing the serious need today to innovate with what we're doing at the national labs and to execute with our government partners and state governments and communities. Those are all the thorny issues. And we haven't even talked about workforce. That's a separate thorny issue, but Governor.
This is, in my opinion, one of the thorny issues that gets caught up in the news media and just gets everybody all up in arms is this concept of we want development, but we don't want it in our backyard. Sure, we want jobs, but don't bring in a data center. Don't bring in any sort of industry that's going to create some, controversy in my back. I mean, look at, in some respects, we're having a conversation about doing some sort of industrial development in one part of the state. And it would be similar to having a conversation with somebody in Kansas about stuff like economic activity and development happening in Ohio or next door in Missouri. You're talking hundreds of miles away, separation that is unheard of in the lower 48, right? We're such a large state that there is so much room for us to have the development and have the pristine state that other stakeholders want to see, right? That I don't want to. Some people may want to go see an active mine and see what that type of human ingenuity and development can do, right? Because they're interested in what we can do. Other they want to go have a vacation and not see that kind of thing. They want to see the pristine. We can do both in Alaska. It doesn't have to be a conversation about one or the other, but that's what it devolves to, is not in my backyard. This concept of only one source of energy is something that, especially on the left, especially the people who have bought into this religion of man-made global warming, of climate catastrophe, and we're all going to die if we don't reduce the carbon footprint, right? I mean, I'm looking out here and it's May and the trees are just starting, the end of May. It's the beginning of June next week and the trees are just now starting to bud. You can't tell me that global warming is something that we've got predicted and know what's happening. Like it doesn't pass the common sense test, right? But people are bought into it like a religion. Wind and solar isn't going to solve all the problems, just like natural gas is not going to solve all the problems. I mean, the populations that live out in areas where the pipeline is not going to bring natural gas to them, they're not going to benefit from that. So Governor Dunleavy's right when he says we need to have an all of the above approach, and we need to be smart about the application. Where natural gas makes sense, let's make it make sense. Where wind and solar make sense, then let's make it make sense. There's so much room for us to grow and apply the right technology to the right problem it has to be an all of the above approach. It has to be. During the Biden administration, all we heard was renewables. Got to have renewables. What's driving it? Federal dollars. That's why it's driving it. Federal dollars have kind of dried up a little bit for renewable projects, and they're not going forward. Okay? It's because the dollars and cents don't make sense unless you've got the free government money, the free taxpayer money coming in to fund the project. Anyway. Yeah. We had the coldest winter since way back decades. Right. Exactly. We can do both. We can. Everybody from stage is talking about doing both. We all need to get on board. We can do both. Yeah. Okay. Let's carry on here.
Sure, those are top of mind issues for me, and one of the reasons we're so excited to have this presence in Alaska and a partnership with the University of Alaska and Fairbanks is that we want to bring everything the government has to offer, everything our other national labs have to offer to benefit Alaskans, to benefit Alaska, which benefits the United States, which benefits the world.
Very good. Director Verdon, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, a couple of weeks ago in Golden, we had a partner forum with about 170 different participants on critical minerals. And the Assistant Secretary was there. And the general feedback was, there's the policy issues, there's the speed to market issues, there's what is the energy mix that's going to provide, regardless of whether it's coal or natural gas or solar or wind or hydro, how do you have affordable energy, but then build up the workforce and innovate and create a market so it's sustainable and enduring. I lived in Eastern Washington State for a lot of my career. I walked through the aluminum smelters that used to be on the Columbia River and the magnesium smelters. And there's a few low snowpack years, and it was more profitable to sell electricity than to keep those plants running. We could sure use those kind of things. So I think the thorniest issue is how you put all these pieces together. I hate to say strategy or roadmap, but especially Alaska's different. Alaska's different, and we need to have a strategy that allows us from a technology point of view or a system point of view, say, how do we get from here to there? So when large investments come in, technology is filling the gaps to make it the performance better, the grid more stable, energy more affordable, and kind of put that plan. The national labs, and there's other national labs in the room, a lot of great colleagues here. What we're good at is objectively looking at all options and giving objective, independent views on technologies and how to optimize a system. Right now, especially in the lower 48, we do one-offs. And I think Alaska has a system challenge. And you describe it. It's the rail belt, it's the logistics, and it's remote villages. And it's the amount of energy that has to be used in the middle of winter.
I think he's describing a leadership challenge. Like if you've got all of the different components of things that we can do, and you've got innovation and new technology that can help you overcome some of the hurdles that you have, but you need some kind of a strategy to implement to get from point A to point B. Well, that's all about leadership. That's what it is. It's somebody being able to simplify the complex down to the understandable in a way that can motivate and empower people to move forward, right? That's difficult. That's hard to do. Don't expect the legislature to do it. I get you, Craig's needling me over here. He says, we can do both. How long have you been out of the legislature? Trust me, I am not naive to the reality that lack of leadership is the natural resource, or I should say leadership is the natural resource that we are in have the least supply of, right? We're in the greatest need of this natural resource called leadership. It's I guess, when we look, it's easy for us to look out and say Alaska's a state and we should have the leaders that other states have. Other states have significantly, order of magnitude greater in population. So their cream rises to the top and our cream rises to the top, and they've just got more cream than we do, right? Because we're the size of a county in each one of those states, with the exception of a couple small population states, right? So the leadership, the cream of the crop with regard to leadership is we're challenged with that in the state of Alaska. It's just a numbers, it's a numbers issue. And the legislature is case number one. Like, spending so much time to scuttle a pipeline when an all of the above approach would be much more productive is a case number one of lack of leadership. Kathy Giesel is not demonstrating any qualities of leadership. Neither is Wielechowski, Senator Wielechowski, and Resources Committee, not demonstrating any kind of leadership. The legislature, we're going to see during this special session who the leaders of the legislature are going to step up and if they can get the job done, right? If the leadership goal is to not do the pipeline in order to win elections, then we need to scream it from the mountaintops. You need to scream it from the mountaintops, because I don't think that's going to resonate with Alaskans, with people who are looking at their electric bills and their gas bills climbing and no hope of anything coming down. No hope. And the legislature's business as usual, playing politics with energy. I think that's a winning message going into the November election if the legislature can't fix it. Okay. What's the next question, Governor Dunleavy?
Yeah, and I agree. And I'll add one more that I think is a thorny issue. And I'm not going to ask people to raise their hand, but I'm sure that half, if not 3/4 at least, of the audience would raise their hand. Going forward, the critical minerals issue is an issue across the board, but also as it relates to national security. If we have to rely on the Chinese, whenever you have to rely on another country, especially a country that isn't necessarily considered to be a long-term ally, share the same values, et cetera, you run a risk. Again, there's going to be a risk premium interjected in all this. And so by bringing this process back to America, both the mining but also the processing is going to be key. But in order to do that, and this is the part that I think the audience would agree, especially investors, we've got to make sure that we get some congressional acts on lawfare and permitting. Long-term certainty, as you mentioned, in some cases, I've heard it's 20-some years for mining. You can't ask your board, or you can't invest in an environment like that if 2 years later a new administration comes in and the rug's jerked out from underneath you. And so from that perspective, the permitting process, I think, is in the hands of Congress. But whatever we can do there, I think, is going to really, really interject certainty in the investment world, and not just in Alaska, but across the United States, but also lawfare. Making sure that when there are lawsuits, that they are genuinely serving a purpose for the greater good in terms of protecting human life and health, not being used to grind down the time and grind down the process so that an investor says, what's the point? I'll go overseas where we don't have to deal with this. So from my perspective, along with the mix that both of you just mentioned, those two, I know, for states and investors, are going to be absolutely crucial going forward. The
systems approach to reducing lawfare is exactly what the governor's bill presents to the legislature as an alternative to revenue for the state. You can drop the mill rate from 20 mills down to 2 mills, or you can get rid of the property tax altogether and put in a volumetric tax that generates the same revenue as a 2 mill property tax. So the question in resources we heard is like, well, why do we need to put a new tax on here that we don't know anything about? I remember Senator Dunbar talking about this, like, well, we're going to have all this bureaucracy and all this stuff to figure this out. And why don't we just reduce the property tax? Well, the why you do it is because of this. It is a structure solution to the litigation risk. Every time that there's a property valuation, and I've said this before on this show, I've said it on the radio elsewhere, every time that you have a property tax valuation into the future, there's always going to be somebody that can potentially disagree with it. Your property tax assessment. That is an opportunity for litigation and cost going forward, and your investors know it. So if you can you can solve that problem with a systems change, meaning you find the revenue through a different structure, tax structure that isn't property tax, then you eliminate that risk of litigation over disagreements on property assessment that happen over time. That's the solution. You don't need to create another law that says, well, you can only litigate within 30 days of a assessment, right? Or you can only litigate it if it's over a certain dollar figure or whatever. Come up with some measure with a statute to tell people when and what's their ability to go to court and seek remedy, right? You create a system that does something different, so there's no need to sue. There's no opportunity to. The volumetric tax, the tax rate gets set by the legislature. The flow rate determines how much gets paid. You don't have to have an assessment, and there's nothing to sue over. It's a solution to the problem of litigation. Do we hear Senate Resources or House Resources talk about that? That's one of the biggest benefits of the bill and going away from the property tax. The leaders are focused on, oh my gosh, how much money are we going to lose for a project that may not get built? Anyway, I'm down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Governor. The amount of capital required for industries you and your state know well, like oil and gas, tremendous capital up front. It can be very small margins depending on what you're selling. The same is true in critical minerals and mining. You have huge capital requirements with long durations. Granted, they also have long lives to these assets, but without the certainty that the regulatory framework is going to change, the United States government, hopefully we will have policies in place that are durable and enduring to allow a framework for those businesses. Obviously, oil and gas is clear, but for the emerging mining and processing industries, the new businesses they're going to start in Alaska. Our office we've issued over $1 billion in funding opportunities and have spent time talking and working with many companies here in Alaska that have projects that will allow us to be free from foreign adversarial nations that control the supply chains necessary to our economic security and our national security. Antimony is a key requirement for defense systems. We need to make that here in the US, and we need to mine it here in Alaska.
Great. So I think we have one last question.
Microphone. Thank you.
Well, how are you thinking through the AI applications and opportunities to utilize AI to safeguard and advance Americans' access to affordable, reliable, and secure energy, and as it relates to critical minerals? Any thoughts on that?
I'm happy to talk about AI. It is going to transform every part of our lives. It is the next, as our secretary likes to say, it's the next Manhattan Project. If you have kids, you know that it is changing the way they learn. It's changing the way they operate. It will change their job opportunities. When we think about the power to iterate and innovate in an AI environment, it is going to allow us to move forward with a speed and precision that hasn't been possible before. If we want to just talk about critical minerals alone, we've both with the National Lab of the Rockies and laboratories across the United States as part of our National Lab Complex, and with the Department of Energy's Genesis mission, which is our singular AI effort leading the United States government in these arenas, we talk about the ability to build a digital twin of a processing facility, for example. So if there's a company in Alaska that wants to build a processing facility for graphite, in a digital environment using AI, we can help maximize not only how you build and structure that facility, but how you maximize its energy efficiency, how you maximize its ingress and egress, what's the right place to site it, how do you take in environmental considerations, how, all of the various things where smart people would sit around a table, lots of engineers would work on projects. What would take months or years, we can do in minutes now. And that will absolutely revolutionize both the efficiency of how you mine. Mining, subsurface innovation is huge. You know, there's a lot of subsurface technology in oil and gas. That subsurface innovation is just starting in the mining space. How are we going to have smart mines where AI allows us to target specific ore bodies, where we're able to identify ways to mine more efficiently, more effectively, more environmentally friendly, how we deal with tailings, how we reprocess. Those are all tangible activities dealing with real world tangible assets, but in a digital environment, we can maximize how we execute those. So AI will be absolutely transformative. It is something we're looking at and investing in at every stage of our value chain, from how we deal with solar interconnects, how we deal with batteries and data centers, how we deal with hydro projects, how we can assess the benefit of installing a new turbine at the Copper River Dam. There's all kinds of ways that we can use AI to make decisions more quickly and execute more effectively.
Director Vernon, you get the last word here.
I would just say it's going to, as the Assistant Secretary said, it is just going to transform everything we do. And maybe there's two parts of it. There's the application of AI, which probably everyone in this room is trying to figure out, how do I use it most effectively? But there's the other war we have to win, is we have to have the data centers in this country and, you know, with affordable energy. And one of the things we're doing at the National Lab of the Rockies is we are working with hyperscalers who are sending their vendors to you know, our facilities at Flatirons to do big megawatt scale testing, because these data centers are very complicated. You can have natural gas, you can have batteries, you could need to be interconnected to the grid. You need to be able to manage loads within the data center. You need to be able to manage loads on the grid. And as we start to collect that data, there's no better way than AI to help optimize that. And so win the physical infrastructure of where data centers go and make sure they exist in this country and they can run affordably. And then there's the application space, which I agree with the Assistant Secretary. It's kind of the imagination is the limit right now on that. You know, and I think in the R&D world, what we're doing is trying to build off those platforms that are going to be built by, you know, the Genesis mission. But, you know, for critical minerals, I also see another really important area that we could work on together, especially with the universities and all the national labs, which is the next generation of the workforce needs to be AI literate. And so even if you went out, I'm imagining now, even if you went out to a remote mine, it would hopefully have the latest computational AI tools to optimize how that mine is run, whether you're using robotics or drones or, you know, self-driving vehicles, and you're worried about safety and productivity. We can put all that together and train the next generation of workforce that is going to be better than I am at it, you know, but it'll be kind of the entry-level skills that everybody needs.
Well, folks, thanks for what you're doing. Thanks for being here in Alaska.
All right,
being part of this. And
so there we have a little bit of hope and a little bit of vision for what is possible. I think it was a little light on details. I kept wanting to know more. Like, how exactly is this going to help with Alaska? I can tell you that my own experiences with artificial intelligence and energy through the very small project that I've got going on with a cold weather greenhouse and being able to produce food year round, even when it's sub-zero outside, right? Artificial intelligence is helping me figure things out that would otherwise take me a long time, or I'm not an engineer. I would have to rely on somebody or pay somebody for advice or a blueprint or something to help understand things. And artificial intelligence has been very useful, very helpful for me to put some technology pieces together in a way that saves me time and effort and energy and having to teach myself. I'm learning. AI is the tool that's helping me, and I'm double checking things as it's happening. But I can see how you could take that and apply it to other environments where you're a trained engineer, and now you're using somebody as an assistant or a subject matter expert on a particular thing, because all of the totality of knowledge that exists in a document or a series of documents or a database or whatever is at the fingertips of that assistant that you have, and it can process the information, synthesize it, and apply it to your particular case a whole lot faster than a human being can. That's real power, right? Well, it requires electricity, so we have to figure out how that happens and how we're going to live with it. A lot of fear and a lot of information, whether it's good information or bad information, floating around out there. And Alaska, the legislature and Alaskans are going to have to figure out what the right answer is with regard to energy generation and artificial intelligence, because it's not going away. The genie is out of the bottle. There's no putting it back in. It's not going away. So how do we use it like any other tool that has ever been developed by humans? How do we use it and maintain our sanity and our lifestyle, our way of life going forward? How do we manage it? Okay. Speaking of artificial intelligence, let's jump on to the next section here, which is should be just ahead here. And I'm going to tee that up. Okay, here's who is going to be presenting on this conversation. I'm going to check in with you all for the moment here. It's not that I don't care about lawyers. I just don't like them until I need them. No, I'm kidding. I just think that we're way too litigious, and we're looking to make a political statement with our lawsuits, and that is detrimental to our way of life. Chris, I think AI will help me in my thinking process, but I don't think I will not allow it to do all of the thinking for me. I don't know whether we ever get to a point where I can just, like, who's seen the movie? It's a animation movie, WALL-E. I think it's a perfect example of what some people think artificial intelligence is going to be. Will be a spaceship of human blobs moving around on automatic carts with TV screens in front of us, and everything's automated, and we can't even stand up and walk if we wanted to save our lives, right? Just, if you haven't seen the cartoon WALL-E, maybe go check it out, because that's kind of an idea of artificial intelligence and 100% of everything that we need taken care of. It's a interesting storyline. Anyway, I don't think that that's the way that my life is going to lead. Whether my children and grandchildren and next generations end up dumber because they let things do the thinking for them and they don't learn from it. Maybe it's just that we'll be learning different things later, right? Anyway, all I can say is that from my personal experience, AI has done thinking for me, but it hasn't replaced my decisions and my QA/QC, my quality control. Is this the right thing to do? Right? The buck stops with me. I still got to make the decision on what to do. The AI is not doing that for me. So if I'm wrong, then I gotta fix it. Anyway. What about oil? So Anthony says oil is 80% of most society's total energy, along with the physical products that are the basis of society. Yeah, we're not getting rid of oil. This is a misnomer. We might reduce, but we are not going to get rid of. I mean, you look around of all of the products that you take for granted on a daily basis that have a foundation in oil, the petrochemical industry. Well, what's the alternative? Like, maybe innovation will drive us to an alternative that we won't need oil, but we don't. To the best of my knowledge, we don't have that for many of our products. I'm talking plastics and plastics related things, right? We don't have an alternative. The alternative would be going backwards because we haven't developed something new to wooden products, metal products. What is it? The glass, right? Those are things that the previous generations, their technology enabled them to do things that were, great. I mean, used to be wooden baskets, or before that it was, woven baskets. And then, we don't even have to do it woven or wood anymore. Now we've got glass, we've got whatever the new technology is. Now we're at plastics. What's after plastics? I don't know what's after plastics. Has it been developed yet? I don't know. I don't think so. But we're not going back. I'm going to tell you that much. We're not going back. Okay. Let's get on to the AI conversation. So I got it teed up here.
Phil Engvist serves as executive director of the Alaska Power Association and brings more than 25 years of experience in Alaska's electric utility industry and statewide energy leadership. Venkat Benunarayanan is vice president of integrated grid at the National Rural Electric Cooperation Association, where he focuses on integrating emerging technology, which will support a reliable, affordable, and resilient grid. Jim Robb is the CEO of the North American Electric Reliability Corporation and brings more than 4 decades of experience across the North American energy sector. Joining them is Kristen Sinema, former U.S. Senator from Arizona, and a leader behind major bipartisan legislation, including the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the CHIPS and Science Act. Kristen has deep experience in infrastructure, water, and technology policy. And finally, David Terry, who's president of the National Association of State Energy Officials. And David leads national policy and coordination efforts on behalf of the state and territorial energy offices across the country. So please join me in welcoming our panel, which will talk about AI, its impacts, and its opportunities.
Good morning, and thank you so much for that introduction, Lieutenant Governor Dahlstrom. Really appreciate that. Now we're right on schedule, and I don't know about you, but it's hard for me not to get energized when I'm at this conference. It feels like old home week. It's nice to see so many familiar faces in the audience, as well as people from around the nation and around the world. And it's really hard not to share the passion that our governor has for Alaska's energy leadership. And if you'd be all right, this is his last ASEC conference, and I've been in the industry 25 years, and he's really spearheaded so many fantastic initiatives and focused on energy. And I would, if you wouldn't mind, could we please give the governor a round of applause for ASEC? Thank you.
Leave it to the government to come up with an acronym.
I'm excited about this panel, and no, it's not because I'm moderating it that I'm excited, but it is a star-studded panel, as you can see. So I'm going to start with my good friend Venkat from NRECA. So Venkat, can you briefly describe the role of the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, and also tell us about the members that you represent? And to get the mic to work, you just push up.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Crystal, for inviting me to the panel session. I've been to Alaska quite a few times, and every time I come here, I learn something new, and I don't think it's going to ever stop. So thanks again for inviting. Yes, the NRECA is the National Rural Electric Cooperatives Association. We are the trade, advocacy, and research association for the 900 plus member cooperatives all across the US, including Alaska. We had the pleasure of representing and the privilege of representing rural electric cooperatives in Alaska. What makes us unique among trade associations, the counterparts are, as you know, the Edison Electric Institute and APPA, American Public Power Association. We have a pretty broad and deep applied research capabilities. We collaborate with a lot of national labs, the National NLR, that was on stage today, and then other labs that you see the exhibitor booths there outside. We do a lot of, and with other partners, with vendors and organizations such as EPRI and so on. So we do a lot of those partnerships and do projects through those partnerships to scale and then bring those solutions to electric cooperatives and anybody else who want to really adopt them. So that's who we are, and looking forward to this session.
Thank you. And I am quickly just going to toss you another question, and then
Sure.
I'll turn it over
Of
to
course.
Mr. Rob. So sorry, I didn't prep you for that.
No problem.
So how are electric utilities in the lower 48 preparing for the significant load growth associated with data centers and AI-driven demand?
Yeah, that's, I prepared a page full of comments on those questions, but we don't have a time.
Oh, you're
for
going to
all
make
those.
moderating challenging for me, aren't you?
So, but here's the thing, right? And one of the things I did when I was doing some research is that there's a lot of solutions that's being talked about for very similar challenges, right? What are those challenges? One is full cost recovery from a cost causation principle, right? No member subsidies of any sort, right? How do you assure that? Second is financial risk mitigation. Now, when you invest in T&D and a lot of power supply, how do you make sure, the contracts do materialize, the data centers do materialize, and then the planning that goes with it. One of the biggest challenges is filtering speculative projects. There's tens of gigawatts and hundreds of gigawatts across the country that's been proposed. How do you know which ones are real? A lot of times there are duplicate applications across the country in many states, right? How do we know that? So that is, and then of course preserving reliability for all members. At the end of the day, it's the co-op, the founding principles is safety, and for all electric utilities, really safety, affordability, and reliability. Right, so that is very important. So what we see as common mechanisms, eligibility thresholds for making sure the right rate classes are assigned to the right loads, depending on the size of the data centers. Again, back to the subsidy issue. The other thing is minimum bills. If you have a contracted capacity, whether you take that capacity or not, you pay the minimum bill because that capacity has been planned and constructed for that purpose. And then moving from monthly to weekly to daily billing. In one co-op, we know, is moving to daily billing of data centers. It's so large that they want to make sure that they realize that revenue and realize that bill on a daily basis. And then you have, and then of course margin calls in power markets. So for example, if there are co-ops in power markets, then the collateral that the data center puts up, if the energy prices go high, if the collateral goes low, then there is a margin call. So that happens. A few other quick things here is, of course, upfront infrastructure payments. All T&D, transmission and distribution infrastructure, upfront 100% gets paid by the requester, which is in this case a data center. And then load ramp schedules. If say a 500 megawatt data center is proposed, not all of it is coming in at once. Which year, how much load is coming and when, and then planning for it becomes a big challenge, right? So getting that.
I'm giving you 30 seconds.
30 seconds. And then finally, depending on the financial creditworthiness of the developer or the proposer of the data center, letter of credit, early termination fees, and I mentioned collateral. So those are some of the key things. And then one last thing is contract term. Aligning that with, for example, the building lease. If they're building a data center, 15 to 20-year lease, aligning the power purchase contract with that 15 to 20 years so that there's some certainty in terms of offtake. Those are some of the best practices. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Well, that guy's studied a little bit, hasn't he? Or he's practiced. Talk about cream rising to the top. Sounds like he knows what he's talking about. Don't know the guy, have never met him. Sounds like he prepared for his time on stage. I was just thinking 400, and I've heard this before, so it's not a shock to me, but the concept of 400, a data center coming in and a first tranche of power, this isn't the complete amount, but we're just starting out at 400 megawatts. Like, how does that change the dynamics of power in the state of Alaska if that's what we're talking about, right? I mean, you can't just turn that on. The state of Alaska can't just turn on 400 megawatts. We're talking about new power generation. An AI data center wants to come to Alaska in the Mat-Su Valley or wherever, and it's going to take how many years to permit for a coal plant or a gas plant or a hydroelectric dam, a wind farm? How long does it take to permit to do all that? And the data center mean, you see the challenge that we have keeping up with, China may not have to do any permitting. If the national security of the United States is in winning the AI battle against an adversary who doesn't care about the permitting costs, they just build the power station and build the AI data center, right? We're at a severe disadvantage. Severe. We lose that battle and we don't even know what the consequences are of losing that battle. How would you know? We don't even know how to apply AI and where the end result of it is, right? Maybe some smart people do, but I don't. Do we want to be there and lose it? Anyway, you can see how this is good. It's a problem for us to solve. We're up in arms about what data centers mean for Alaska, right? I hear opposition because they're going to be using too much water. Data centers aren't coming to Alaska if they don't solve this problem first, which is energy. 400 megawatts? Like, there's nowhere around here that you can generate that much more power. You have to build a new power station. So what is it going to be? How long is it going to take? What permitting needs to happen? Anyway. It's a significant issue, and it has major impacts for the state of Alaska, energy-wise. So if they need 400, and if 400 is the total amount that they're going to need, how much more could they produce if it wasn't just a 400-watt plant? Maybe it was a 500-watt plant. There's an extra 100 that can benefit the rest of Alaskans, right? I mean, there's opportunity here.
Actually, the reason why I threw you that question is I knew that you were going to set Mr. Rob up to talk about a key topic, which is reliability. So, Jim, if you could tell us about what is NERC, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation.
Sure, and you can give me more than a 30-second warning. You can come over and kick me if I'm droning on too long. So NERC is quite a unicorn in the world of energy. We were basically designed to be the trade association for the physics of the grid, although not everybody uses that term but me. We were set up really in response to the 2003 Northeast blackout. And our goal is to set mandatory and enforceable reliability and security standards for the bulk power system across the interconnected parts of North America. Now, that does not include Alaska. But interestingly, Alaska over the last couple of years has created a similar organization. I think it's called the Rail Belt Reliability Organization to perform similar services to what we do in the lower 48 and the Canadian provinces. What's important to know about us is that we are fundamentally a nonpartisan, independent organization. We're funded by ratepayer assessments. So the great thing about me is I don't have to carry anybody's water, right? I can look at what's going on the grid, and we talk a lot about the dynamics. We research the issues on the grid and make sure that we're kind of factoring that into the reliability requirements that the utilities have to conform to. So that's us in a nutshell.
Thank you. So I understand that NERC recently issued a reliability guideline and a level 3 alert related to large computational loads. Can you tell us about these developments?
Yeah, so we formed this large, what we call large loads, is truly a transformational issue for the power grid. We've not seen this kind of load growth since the post-World War II era, and we haven't seen loads of this size really ever. So it's a really kind of a generational moment. We formed an advisory group consisting of utility leadership, data center leadership, the trade associations, and the one thing that came through very clearly is that everybody wants clarity, consistency, and they want it done yesterday in terms of how to interconnect these very, very large computational loads onto the grid in a way that promotes and preserves reliability for everybody. So two of our tools are a reliability guideline, which we issued 3 weeks ago, and then a level 3 alert. And we've only issued 3 level 3 alerts since we were formed. And a level 3 alert lays out what we would describe as the essential actions that utilities ought to take when they contemplate interconnecting the load of the scale and nature of the data centers. It's not enforceable, right? So we don't audit utilities to it the way we would a reliability standard, but it does lay out a very clear expectation of what utilities should be doing in terms of modeling, commissioning loads, making sure that there's good interchange of information between the load and the utility, so that as the load operates, the grid operators know what's going on and can manage the load and the rest of the system to, again, promote reliability.
Great, thank you. Senator, appreciate you joining us. So please tell us about the mission and structure of the AI Infrastructure Coalition. I think it was set up, was it November of this past year?
Yes, so we did our big launch last fall, but we actually started the AIC, AI Infrastructure Coalition, in February of 2025. A friend of mine who works at Microsoft approached me literally on my last night in the United States Senate. And he said, you know, we've got this challenge that we're facing nationally in that there's no one who's brought together the entire tech stack from the funders to the hyperscalers and the modelers and the data center companies themselves, the energy companies, and then, you know, the cable guys and the staffing. Like, we need everyone together in the room to create an ecosystem for the AI infrastructure build out in our country. And he said, will you help? I said, yeah, call me back on January the 3rd after 12 noon when I'm a private citizen and I will help you build this. And so I recruited former Congressman Garrett Graves of Louisiana, who retired at the same time as me. And I said, we're going to chair this and work on this together. So we formed a first of its kind trade association. And our goal is to create the national ecosystem to advance American AI dominance.
Let me pause here just for a second and have a brief rabbit hole conversation, okay? Number one, China is our most direct adversary with regard to artificial intelligence, okay? What this presenter, this senator, former senator, is articulating, is talking about, is a trade organization, a bunch of volunteers in multiple different categories of technology across the industry, being led, being encouraged, being asked to participate and support a concept of working together to apply things that are necessary to answer the question on how do we address the needs and win at artificial intelligence and the power needs, right? So it's pulling everybody together. How does China do that? What is the alternative to the way we're doing it? Well, China has a communist party. And it just says, okay, you, all of you, be over here on Saturday, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z, right? The Communist Party has the ability in its structure and its makeup. It may not be as quality as volunteers, right? Because you're being voluntold to go, but the mechanism and the forcing of the activity and integrating as best they can, they've got that organization. It's being forced upon them, right? It's their political party that is forcing that to happen. We're not going to have a political party or a government or something in the United States that's going to force us to be heavy-handed in this. We, the people, the responsible parties, the responsible entities in our own industries are going to have to come together and figure this out, or we're going to lose to the Communist Party that will push forward regardless of all of the niceties and the politics and the political correctness and the sensitivities that we have in the United States, the Western world has. They're just going to throw that out the window. They're going to move forward with it. And they'll beat us. They'll beat us to the generation of power and to the generation of electrons equaling AI data power. They're going to beat us. It's an all of the above approach that has to happen. And I'll hold my thoughts to the end, I think. But if we think that we're going to stop this concept of moving AI, if it's entering into your mind that it's like, oh, that's fine, they can go do it somewhere else, but not in my backyard, it would be better for us to put our energies towards managing it making it acceptable in our world, because it's not going away. We're not going backwards. We're not going back to the Model T. We have what we have. We're not going backwards.
So we want to ensure that the policies that the administration and Congress are putting forth are the policies that support and propel American AI dominance. And what we found was that while there are a whole host of policy issues that are important to be decided, the number one bottleneck that we faced is energy. And so we work really close with the National Energy Dominance Council, which is housed inside the White House, helmed by the very capable Jared Agan. We work closely with Secretary Burgum, who I know is presenting later this afternoon. And our goal is to, again, help shape the federal landscape to ensure that American AI can be built and can operate and is the dominant AI force in our globe. So it's really fun and exciting work. And we are really excited about Alaska entering that conversation and growing to be an AI data center powerhouse.
I want to pose an analogy here. I said something earlier about we can't see the end state of artificial intelligence, and Brian says end result, Spencer Pratt videos. I don't even know what that is. I'll have to Google or YouTube Spencer Pratt to find out. I don't know who Spencer Pratt is. Is his crystal ball better than mine? Is he from the future? Like why should I trust Spencer Pratt? Anyway, here's the point that I want to make. Everybody who's paying attention to artificial intelligence from a national defense perspective says, we do not want to lose this war, whatever that means. We do not want to lose this battle, this race to our adversaries. Because what we recognize is the power of artificial intelligence to do things and understand things, basically understand things quicker than human beings can, means that if you apply that capacity to waging war, then the loser stands to lose a whole lot more than just credibility on who's got the best AI chatbot. Everything's at stake. Like everything's at stake. Okay. It appears that the United States is approaching this battle in a similar fashion as to what I'll describe here. If you recognize that winning war, a kinetic war, similar to World War II, let's just use World War II as an example. At pretty much all costs, we've got to win the war, because if we don't, we all speak German, right? There's a conquering force that will come over and subjugate us to their will, right? So we've got to win at all costs. We don't fight the war and say, well, we got to win the war, but we can only really win this war if we have male and female porta potties. We have to have an equal number of females in our units, because, you know, what's fair is fair. We got to have females there. And all of the political correctness that is pervading our society right now, that is adding complexity and adding things that aren't value added. They don't really matter to the end result. It is the niceties in society that when you really boil it down, when you're fighting the war, don't matter. It doesn't matter whether you've got male and female latrines. When you're out fighting the battle, if you have a latrine, there's going to be a line and men and women are going to go use it. And that's that. I'm just using it as an example because we can think of this, right? Our system of self-government has put a whole lot of things, hurdles. If you're running a race, we've put a whole lot of politically correct and environmental and all of the bureaucratic hurdles. We put all of these hurdles in the way of us running this race. And we look at it and see what we're doing, but we don't see what's happening with our adversary. We're focused on ourselves. We're not focused on the adversary. The adversary is just kind of taken a bulldozer and pushed all the hurdles away and said, look, we got to win the race. This is what we're going to do. Their way of doing it may be less efficient than and overall less capable than what we're capable of, maybe. But they're going to win. They're going to win the race because they don't have the hurdles they have to jump over. We may have a superior way of getting to the end of the race, is what I'm trying to say, to their way of getting to the end of the race. But because we have the hurdles and they don't, we don't end up winning the race. So that's the point of the rabbit hole conversation right here, is all of the things that we have created that are of a politically correct nature or of a go along to get along nature, right? We have a certain number of people in our society that think we're all going to die because the earth is going to burn up and we've got to lower our carbon footprints. Okay, well, a certain number of those have gotten elected because they convinced enough people that they were right, that we now have this flavor in our government, okay? And we've got it in our boards of directors of our corporations. So this is what I'm saying by putting the hurdles in place, is because somebody has believed that nonsense and then put hurdles that you have to overcome to solve this problem of energy. All of that is going to prevent us. It's going to slow us down from winning the race. And that's what we've got to, that is one of the things that we have to focus on. What the senator is saying is we get all of these people together and we have the conversations and we say, well, how can we get from point A to point B? Well, if it includes just putting the hurdles and figuring out a easier way to jump over the hurdles without what hurdles are actually necessary for us to win the race. That's a culture problem that we have right now. It's a culture problem because I think there's not enough Americans that know or just trust others of what's necessary to win the race, win the war. We just got this low trust environment where we put up barriers to make ourselves feel better, but they're not actually helping getting anything done. So my hope would be is that if this national organization is putting together recommendations and things like that, that Alaska would use this in our own way to say, what are the very absolute necessary regulatory hurdles to get a coal plant up and operational? What's the fastest one, whether it's natural gas or whether it's coal? I mean, coal, we know where the coal is coming from. We put it in a truck and ship it down. It seems like it would be the fastest thing to get built, the fastest energy source to tap into. Get a dozer, get a digging implement, get the coal, crush it, refine it, whatever you got to do, put it in a truck, ship it down to where it needs to go, and use it for your energy source. And that plant gets built. Whatever the hurdles are that are in place, the absolute minimum life and environment requirements, those are the only things that really matter. Everything else that's politically correct and is not necessary needs to go by the wayside. It isn't a case where we need to say, okay, well, this is the permitting timeline and this is just the way it has to be because this is how it's always been. This is where we've come. We're going to lose the race if we approach the problem that direction. That's my concern. That's what I think, because I am fairly confident that the Chi-Coms, they're not thinking about this the same way we are. They're like, we're going to win the race. And our competitive advantage is not having all this political correctness. We just do whatever the party says do, and we go get it done. And by all measurements, our experts are telling us that we are losing the race to the Chinese. It is not because the Chinese are any smarter than we are. That's not the case. We've got our own brilliant people in our country. It is because we have put the bureaucratic and cultural hurdles in the way of allowing us to run the race in a way that we can win the race. So get a bunch of people, smart people together to figure out how we can jump over the hurdles easier is not going to help us win the race. It might help us be faster than what we would have otherwise been, but we still don't win the race. Anyway, that's my perspective from where I'm at.
Right? Because you know that we have at least one data center here already.
Yes, but you could have so many.
Yes, exactly.
And I am here to help that. It's very exciting. And I'm just going to give a quick plug to your fantastic governor who is on point and understands how important this is for Alaska's future, not just from an economic perspective, from national security, for long-term innovation and growth. Like, it's super exciting for you to have a governor and your senators who are leaning in so forward thinking on this, which is, again, a huge contrast to what we're seeing in some other parts of the nation. So.
Well, and speaking of politics on the national level, and thank you for taking it down to the state as well, but we're going to move quickly back up to the national level because President Trump and 7 major tech companies recently signed the Ratepayer Protection Pledge. So tell us briefly what that means and what we can expect.
So this is fantastic. This really started, again, with Microsoft. So Microsoft reached out to the White House and said, we want to do a big kind of splash to share with America about our commitment as we're moving forward on this innovation agenda. And part of that commitment is that we will cover our own energy costs, not just the ratepayer protection to ensure that your costs don't go up as consumers, but we also want to be a part of building out the grid and increasing resiliency and ensuring that there's long-term, strength and health in the system. And the president, of course, was like, this is fantastic. The president and Microsoft launched this effort. Most of the other hyperscalers joined in, and they've announced that they intend to help build out the grid, increase resiliency, and ensure that average consumers are not paying more for this build out of AI and tech and innovation. And this is a really, really important endeavor because Americans are being fed misinformation that is being driven by China, convincing Americans that the increase in their energy costs is due to AI data centers, when the fact is the opposite, that the growth of AI data centers in states where we've seen the biggest growth, like Virginia, has actually decreased costs for consumers and has provided tax revenue that has dramatically changed the landscape for these communities.
Go ask your local co-op if an increase in demand, an increase in purchasing of kilowatts of electrons, go ask them if they had a 10-fold, 20-fold increase in the purchase of electrons, what that would do for the rate that is socialized across all of ratepayers. Go ask them what would happen. What it's going to mean is the rates come down. This is a true statement. If people are being fed a line that says, and they believe that because you have a data center come in that your costs are going up, that's not reality.
Funding additional fire and police services in schools and building more roads. It's actually increasing the value for homeowners and decreasing their energy costs. Companies like Georgia Power have announced, for instance, that when they finish their energy grid build out and their increase, it's going to lower costs for every consumer across the state. But the misinformation train is running fast. And we know this. It is fueled by the People's Republic of China, and it is convincing Americans wrongly that their costs are going up because of data centers, when in fact, It's either neutral or actually lowering costs. And so the ratepayer protection pledge is a really important part of the president's agenda and the major hyperscalers agenda to make sure that Americans know your costs are not going to go up. But what is going to go up is the convenience of your life. You know, the average American accesses a data center 100 times a day. Now, they don't know that, but your phone is basically the remote control to access the data center. And the data center is the cloud. So sometimes people will say to me, well, I don't like data centers. I keep all of my data in the cloud. Well, yeah, honey, that's what a data center is. We should just repaint them to look like clouds, right?
Senator, I'm giving you 5 seconds.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm done.
Okay.
That's it.
Sorry. It's hard to cut off a former senator, but I know we've got a lot of great things to talk
Highly
about.
compliant.
So,
Here we
all
go.
right. Appreciate that. So going back to the state level, we have David Terry, and he's with an organization that I call NASIO, but that's only because I've been in the industry a long time. And I understand that you have a board member in the audience.
We do. We're very fortunate to have Curtis Thayer from the Alaska Energy Authority here in the audience, one of our
That's right.
56 state and territory members.
Wonderful. Well, David, tell us briefly about the National Association of State Energy Offices and its role in supporting energy offices, and maybe about working with the Alaska Energy Authority on this topic.
You bet. Happy to. NASI has been around for decades. We have all 56 states and territories as members. Governors in each state designate the office. As I'm fond of saying about states, when you've met one, you've met one. They're all different, but that's what makes the job great, and it's what makes the country great, I think. We focus on all energy issues. It is truly all of the above. It's oil, gas, nuclear, geothermal, critical minerals, major industrial efficiency, building efficiency items, certainly data center, but especially the grid. We work with NERC a lot, certainly. Jim and his team are critical to this operation. Every state has a set of policies that's a little bit different, but most of them are really similar to what the governor outlined earlier. They're around economic development from an energy perspective and thinking about what the community needs, about affordability. So many things that the senator just mentioned in terms of the grid are complicated. I think many people are being misinformed. One of the things that our office has helped do is really be able to level set, provide a good neutral set of information, inform their governors, inform their legislators in all of these areas. One place in particular I would point out, we have activities around grid optimization, growing power on the grid, et cetera, but energy security as well. And I think the importance of AI, both in helping with security and in security, is really critical. So there are a lot of pieces here that are beyond the nuance and beyond the sort of misinformation you see. And I think we have a lot of great opportunity, really once in a generation opportunity here.
Well, I will say, as a utility person, it gives me comfort to hear you raise the energy security issue. So I do have a follow-up question for you, and you touched on this in your comments. In your view, which states have successfully developed policies and economic development frameworks that support data center load growth? Which states might we consider to look toward?
Sure, there are a lot. It's a fast-moving target. I think Virginia, because of the preponderance of data centers, you've certainly all read about that. Once you see it in person, you really get a flavor for that. We've learned a lot. I think former Governor Youngkin took major steps in terms of power addition and also thinking about the protection of consumers. Now Governor Spanberger, I think, is making really important steps around load flexibility and utilization of the grid. Those are important, both policies and legislation that have been passed in Virginia over the last 2 years. So we can learn a lot from them. Similarly, Indiana, I think, has taken really similar steps. The governor and the legislature have moved around utilization issues in terms of load flexibility across major large loads that really utilize the grid to a greater degree than it is. It's an unusual a machine, if you will, in that we underutilize it, which goes to some of the opportunity to lower cost. The other place that they're working, though, is advancing new power additions, advanced nuclear, reconductoring of transmission lines with advanced conductors. Both legislatively and the policy front, you see that. Really distinct from regulation. Regulation is critically important in terms of protecting consumers for regulated power, but the policy direction the governors set are critical. I would name two other quick states to note. In Louisiana, the governors worked really steadily on not only nuclear and power additions, but what they can do here and now to lower costs. I think those are three good examples, and certainly the kind of siting and permitting issues that Governor Dunleavy just raised a moment ago. Those are front and center. We see that at the state level. Federal permitting reform is the #1 policy priority for our organization, in fact. and we testified recently on that.
Very good. Thank you. So Venkat, back to you. You have been to Alaska several times in your work with NRECA, and you're very familiar with our unique electric energy landscape. What opportunities might we consider as we look toward a future of potentially having more data centers in the state?
Yeah, Alaska, to start with what Governor Dunleavy said in his opening speech, it's blessed with a lot of natural resources and a lot of infrastructure. He gave a lot of illustrations as to, examples of that, and that is really the starting point. When you look at a data center, there is a must-have. 4 things are must-have: land, water, power, and fiber, connections. So obviously, Alaska is blessed with a lot of abundant land and water, and the fiber connections are also growing. Power, of course, is based on demand. So that is something that needs to be brought in. But couple of things here. One is most of Alaska are independent microgrids, right? So you all, by far, when compared to the rest of the nation, have planning and operating experience for microgrids. Look at a data center. They have on-site generation and they have a grid connected. So microgrid, yes. Microgrid possibilities, yes. So that is some huge experience that you can leverage as an opportunity to do so. And then of course, the first data centers, a lot of data centers were done in Scandinavia for a reason: cooler climate, and Alaska, I learned, can get tad cold. So so that is another opportunity there in terms of cooling efficiencies and things like that. The other thing I want to go back to, the senator said, there's an economic boost that comes in with data centers, right? Construction, hospitality industry, food service, professional employment, tech workforce, all of that comes in. So that is an opportunity again to attract data centers and be able to do that. Now there are some challenges. Workforce is a challenge, attracting workforce. I know there's a panel after this on workforce, and certainly it will be discussed there also. But then the question is, how do you attract that workforce to do so? One thing I do want to say is that going back to the AI, I think the question was asked of the earlier panel on what is the AI use cases, right? So if you look at AI from a data center perspective, yes, data center, one of the big reasons for data centers is the growth in AI, but then you can turn around and use that AI to better serve the data centers, more efficiencies, right? And then automation in lieu or augment the workforce as needed. There are a lot of use cases in AI that will both serve the data centers and make the utilities operate more efficiently. So I think that's another opportunity that comes with it. So I'm going to stop there for now, but I do have other things we can talk about.
Wow, you got us thinking about a lot of things, though, in a short amount of time. Thank you. So kind of switching gears a little bit, we'll move to Jim. Jim, what do you see as the next steps related to data centers and crypto mines from a reliability perspective?
Yeah, so it's very clear to us that, and as everyone on the panel has said in the previous panel, this is a generational opportunity, and the transformational benefits from society really dictate that we need to be in a leadership role in bringing these resources online. Here's the issue with data centers. So we have in our long-term reliability assessment, we project something like 200 gigawatts of new load coming on the system related to a data center. That rolls off the tongue until you think that a gigawatt is a city the size of San Francisco. So this is an enormous amount of power that's going to need to be developed, and the loads themselves are extraordinary. Many data center campuses being talked about today by the hyperscalers may start at a gigawatt and may have plans to grow up to like 5, 10, even 15 gigawatts. That's like 15 nuclear units, right? So their behavior is very, very important to the reliability of the grid. We've seen issues in Virginia, which is the largest concentration of data centers in the country, where small disturbances on the grid can cause the data centers to, in Elon Musk's words, freak out and trip offline and create a real imbalance in the grid that the grid operator needs to scramble to be able to restabilize. So our goal here is over the course of this year to develop the criteria that would say a data center Our proposal is over 20 megawatts with a megawatt of computational load connected at 60 kV or higher, little geeky, would have to be registered with us. And then we're going to start working with them on developing the right sort of performance requirements so that they can, in layman's terms, kind of ride through these disturbances, because these disturbances happen all the time on the grid. And it's important that the data centers be able to ride through those as opposed to trip offline and then create an issue for the operators to manage. So that's our number one commitment, right, is to try to get those requirements identified by the end of this year and then work with them to kind of develop the mandatory requirements, if you will, so that not just the big hyperscalers who can do this and who will do this stuff, but every data center that meets that criteria threshold will have to have that same kind of capability. And I think that's one of the most important things as we commission these loads, that we know how they're going to behave and that we can kind of make them behave in a way that doesn't create issues for the rest of the system.
Absolutely. Thank you. Senator, what types of agreements are emerging between developers, utilities, and communities to address concerns that we've touched on in this panel, such as electrical infrastructure needs, water use, and overall project footprint?
It's so complicated. As I mentioned earlier, there's this well-funded misinformation campaign that has led to a significant rise in NIMBYism, right? So not in my backyard. And we're seeing this kind of flow across the country right now, and it's highly problematic. Just earlier when we were talking about some of the great stuff that Virginia has done in the last couple of years, that is really great news. However, the Virginia legislature is right now considering legislation that would really restrict and roll a lot of that forward thinking back. And it would be devastating, not just to the movement towards innovation and a more efficient economy, it would be horrible from a tax perspective for the local community. We saw that Maine, for instance, just passed legislation to ban data centers. Thank goodness Governor Mills vetoed that legislation. But you're seeing this NIMBYism that's fueled by misinformation rise in communities all across the country, even in my home state of Arizona, which is a wonderful place for data centers from an environmental perspective in particular. So there's kind of a two-pronged effort that's happening. The first is to combat the misinformation and the infiltration of this misinformation from the Chinese Communist Party, which is being picked up and supported by kind of populist efforts across the country. So the first is to combat that NIMBYism and that misinformation. And then the second thing to do is to tell a proactive message around what is best practice. And so the reality is there are lots and lots of things to do that are best practices. Ensuring, for instance, that you've got some standards around where data centers are located, right? Ensuring that they're in industrial communities, that there's, setbacks from major roads, that they have noise issues, that you're addressing the water issue. The old school data centers did take a lot of water, but the new data centers either rely on zero water or less water than a traditional office building. Now, that is not as much of an issue here in Alaska, but in my home state of Arizona, that is a very important issue, and it's important to know the facts. So creating standards about best practices and implementing those standards in city councils and state legislatures across the country will make a huge difference. Addressing the energy issues. Each jurisdiction handles their energy issues differently. In some parts of the country, like in Arizona, the energy utilities, which are vertically integrated, they sell energy to data center and other tech companies in a separate bucket than they sell to consumers. So it's impossible to push the cost onto consumers. But that's not true in all parts of the country. And in some jurisdictions, the hyperscalers can do behind the meter, creating their own energy, which can be helpful in the short term, but also complex in terms of managing their overall grid. Some are on grid or off grid. And so really having conversations about not nationalizing, because that would never work in our country, but really thinking strategically about how to make a one-size-fits-one kind of message for each locality or state or region is really how we're going to get through this and create long-term energy reliability and overcome the political NIMBYism that's happening in communities across the country.
Thank you. David, from NASIO's perspective, what do you see happening in the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
I think we'll keep moving down this path. I just want to follow up on the comments that the senator just made. I think that's absolutely correct. One of the challenges here is that if you think about if you were around when the internet really evolved in the late 90s, early 2000s, that was actually kind of slow moving. It was 8 or 10 years. This is 2 years. I think the speed of policy at the state level, local level is important. The speed of communication and good neutral sort of factual communication that we're talking about here. The energy offices play a central role in that from an energy perspective. So I think what we'll see is moving. I'm fond of what Assistant Secretary Hareza from the Department of Energy always says: stabilize, optimize, and grow the grid. I think we do all three of those at the same time. I think you see more and more states taking that approach all at once to answer the mail, but also to reach out to the hyperscalers early and reach out to the local communities earlier to make sure they have the right information about the benefits for them and sharing of best practices about how those centers are developed. That's the trend we're seeing already. One last point I would make, just in the interest of time, we had tracked last legislative season at the state level a lot of bills that were passed around developing new power on the grid, new generation. This summer, we'll end up, most of the state legislatures will wrap up shortly. We see over 300 bills. Most of them are around affordability and costs. So I think we're going to see these come together in a positive way, I hope.
Does anybody remember waking up January 1st in the year 2000? It's a long time ago. Do you remember Y2K? As they're talking here, I can't help but think back to the last, and somebody said something about when the internet came about, right? And that spurred my thinking about the last time people got crazy about technology. I'm not going to be someone who's going to say that technology doesn't have any evils attached to it and there's not any risk. Totally not where I'm going. There is risk and there is evil. There's been evil in the world and there will be evil in the world. How do we manage it? Okay. I remember waking up January 1st, just a general feeling, right? I don't remember the specifics, but I just remember waking up January 1st, the year 2000, thinking, well, that was much ado about nothing. Like, the world didn't end. Computers still work. We still get to work. Stoplights still work. TV still work. Radio still work. Everything that's connected to the internet is still working. Like, there were a lot of people worried that the everything was going to come to an end. Y2K. I mean, for all the younger generation, they don't know anything about this, but do you remember? It was crazy. I don't know. Maybe some of you were this was new enough technology that you didn't own a computer, and it was like, what do you mean Y2K? What was that all about? I was interested in technology, and so maybe I was paying attention more than you were. I just remember there was a whole lot of people out there thinking the world was going to come to an end. I'm bringing that up because there are always going to be people like that. I'm not saying that we discount people's fear. I certainly don't want a data center moving in and that I don't have enough water to drink. Like, I don't want negative impacts because the data center moves in. And that's why you manage it appropriately, right? Yeah. Christopher, that's exactly what they thought. Everything was going to shut down over a change in date. Tani was in the state emergency center watching the clock tick. Yeah. But I mean, I just throw that out there for a little bit of perspective as we move forward through time. This is all going to be written about in history books someday. As we deal with and manage this very large problem that we have of technological growth being faster than we can physically understand. How do we manage it? And that is that is not through fear. That would be the worst possible thing that we can do. Many people are going to be talking about it. Fear is the easiest thing to succumb to. It is contagious. It doesn't take any energy at all to let your fears run away. Matter of fact, the exact opposite is it is hard not to fear and to be disciplined and to look for the facts and to actually look at reality. That's hard. That's the hard thing to do. The easy thing to do is just fear and have a knee-jerk reaction and move on. Trust the first thing you hear and move on. All of that is how we got to the Y2K crisis, right? The reality is it was much ado about nothing. Undoubtedly, there are some applications of data centers that have inconvenienced people. And there's going to be some societal change, some physical change in neighborhoods. All of that is growth that happened with railroads. It happened with roads before that. It happened with urban sprawl in down the lower 48. You've got entire communities that cropped up of suburbs outside of metropolitan area, right? That is the way of things. Data centers is the next way of things. To whatever, good or bad, that's the way of things. So how do we properly manage it? As a fiscal social conservative, as somebody who would like to see people who think like I do win and have a seat at the table and have whatever this ends up being look like, have some flavor of how I think it should look, we need to approach it in that sense, that we are going to manage this appropriately. We are not going to live by fear, and we are not going to continue to repeat things that we hear on the internet just because somebody else said them. We're going to take the project that is sitting in our neighborhood and are being proposed in our area of the world, and we're going to look at the facts and judge the case by the facts, because one data center is not exactly the same as another data center. And what you hear about in the internet for something happening in some other state 10 years ago or 5 years ago or last year, could be completely different for you and your application here today. And we are going to be smart enough to deal with the facts based on our case and manage it appropriately. That's leadership. That's moving out in a direction that says we can have both. We can do things both, increase in technology and protect ourselves in doing it. How do I know? The worst case scenario of human beings having to fight things and overcome objectives is war. And we can figure out how to do that. We can figure it out. And it is one of the most complex things that you can ever attempt to do as human beings, is take other life and do so efficiently and win that war. Figuring out how to manage this complex thing is you're not having to take lives. You don't have that thing. And somebody might be thinking, what the heck, Ben, where are you going with this? I'm trying to communicate that the emotion and the risk and the fear and the uncertainty and the political angst that exists in our culture right now over data centers is nothing that doesn't exist in other aspects and other areas of our life. One of which is fighting a battle physically, like in a war. If we constrain ourselves without seeing the bigger picture, we will find ourselves in a position that is untenable, meaning we can't survive, because our adversary across the pond isn't constrained by the same things that we're constrained by. Why did Germany lose the war in World War II? Because they could not keep up with the technological and economic that led to military advances, namely by the United States. Our economy over time, remember, when we entered the war, Germany was they had the upper hand militarily. But they lost that through the loss of their economic engine And the United States, like Germany, couldn't affect our economic engine. Our ability to outproduce, in some cases, not even the best. Like you compare our tanks to their tanks. Their tanks far superior. Our tanks, not so much. But we could produce a whole lot more of them than they could of theirs. It mattered. Our engine, our economic engine, and our ability to generate economic and military power and project that is what mattered and why we won that war. The same thing is going to happen with regard to artificial intelligence and the battle that's going on in the data world, and what that means for when you boil it down, one human being trying to force another human being to see it their way. That's the conflict that's brewing with the Communist Party in China and a free country like the United States. It is brewing. We do not want to lose that war, this battle that would lead to this conflict. We need to be wise about this. So manage it appropriately. That's the message that I want to say. Let's see. They should be about done with this.
Wonderful. Well, I know I'm running close to the break, but I'm looking at Andrew. I'm going to give. I feel bad because I feel like I knew what was going to happen. We would get on stage, we would blink, and this wonderful panel would be over. But I'm not going to let that happen. So I'd like to give each of you just about a minute or so for closing comments. And if you could focus on those comments, what are some takeaways that you would like Alaska to know? Thank you.
Okay, I'll start, and I want to double down on the comment made earlier with David. It's the communication is key. Whatever you're doing, but in these data centers, remember the folks who are coming in from the data center side are not grid experts. So even the terminology needs to be said in a way that's mutually understandable and vice versa, right? So the frequent early communication is key, and once the expectations are set, then it becomes a far easier process. I don't want to double down on Jim's comments. When data centers grow bigger and bigger, your single largest contingency may not be a generating unit. It may be a load failing. So planning and operating, understanding that and planning the operating the grid accordingly is very, very important. And then finally, from an affordability perspective, just making sure that that becomes one of the prime importance, when you look at data centers and their impact, and making sure the messages are clear. To me, that is the other point that I want to make. Thank you.
So I'd make a couple points. One, for those of you who are actively engaged in the operation of the utilities up here, you should read our materials, right, and adapt them as appropriate to your own situation on commissioning these kinds of loads. The most important thing, and I kind of foot stomp with the senator, and I think what we've all said here, this dynamic creates an incredible opportunity both to improve the infrastructure of the country. If you think back to the electric infrastructure in the country, most of it was developed through the industrialization process that occurred post-World War II. That's why we have such an aging infrastructure problem in the lower 48. This is an opportunity to leverage some ginormous balance sheets to be able to reinforce the grid. That'll pay dividends for years to come. The other thing is that the opportunity to improve affordability through better utilization of the network that exists is also an extraordinary opportunity for the country. I do agree with the senator, right? The amount of misinformation and disinformation being sowed, whether from China or Russia or any of our other national adversaries, is extraordinarily hard to combat, but it's very important that we do that, because this is absolutely a generational opportunity with tremendous benefits both for society as well as economic well-being for the country. So let's approach this with a let's get it done attitude.
Senator.
So I think the first thing I would say is to make sure that we're communicating to Alaskans how AI makes a difference in their everyday lives. I said earlier that your phone is your remote control to the data center, and the average American uses it 100 times a day. Most people don't know that, right? What we're seeing is that 35 and under individuals in the country are specifically concerned about AI. They are also the highest utilizers of AI, but translating that to folks is really important. People in your lives will get their breast cancer detected 22% sooner and faster because of AI. Children who are on a bus route to school will get there faster and safer because of AI. If there is a fire in your community, the fire folks will come to your home to protect you faster because of AI. So making sure that people understand how AI makes a measurable difference in your daily life is number one. And number two, Alaska is a prime location for the growth of this innovation and technology that makes all of our lives better. You've got the space, you've got the energy, not only energy online, but the coming energy to be a star in this area. And this is going to transform all of our lives for the better. So combating the misinformation, making sure that people understand what AI is doing in their everyday lives, and then working together as a community so that Alaska capitalizes on this incredible step forward on innovation is absolutely key to your future.
Take us home, David.
Happy to. I think a couple of things. One, focusing on reliability and affordability. I think that's key. We will make a huge misstep. Two, the automated load management opportunities we have for load flexibility, not just of data centers, but of all major energy resources and aggregated loads in the power sector is there. Technically, we have it. We need policy and regulatory change at the state and federal level to deliver lower cost. Third, this is not a new investment in the grid that's being done just because of data centers. We have underinvested in the grid for 30, 40 years, and this was coming with or without data centers, and that's important. Lastly, there's a lot of hand-wringing in different parts of the country over what this means, a lot of times incorrectly. I would say the glass is not just half full, it is overflowing, and we have to jump and take advantage of it now, do it thoughtfully, much as they're doing here in Alaska, and I think we'll be very pleased with the result.
All right.
All right. All right. Good. We're at the end of that panel, and I think we've got a good flavor of enough information, at least, that we know a little bit more about artificial intelligence and the application and use of energy. The challenges that the power companies in our own neck of the woods, in our areas of the state, are going to have to deal with regard to integrating with a data center should it show up. We've already got data center conversations happening about a coal power plant in the valley and a data center showing up there. The first of many. I know the federal government is likely to build one with regard to all of the missile defense and things that are happening up in the interior. So it's coming. It is coming. And we have to be smart and manage it in a way that benefits all Alaskans. Okay. That's my take on it. I don't know what you took from all of this. I've followed a little bit of your words in the chat window. If you're watching the recording, I would love to have your feedback on what you're thinking about this. I would invite you to send me an email and just share your thoughts on it. One final word, and this is from somebody who finds the biblical truths in our world to be of value to me. In God I trust has got to be our motto, and it has got to be our thing that we hold dear, right? Because all of the tools and all of the things of this world can go away, and we still have to have that, okay? That's the foundation. In God we trust. In AI, we don't trust. It's just a tool. It's no different than a shovel was to us before we had shovels. Wow, look how much faster I can dig a hole. I now have a shovel. Before it was a stick in my hands and a rock, and now I've got a shovel. Can you imagine how people felt with the first shovel? Like, get out of here. You know how long I've been waiting for something like this technological increase? You know, another thing that made technology, people are like, we can't go back. The stirrup for people riding horses. You once you try it, you're not going to go back. The point I'm getting at is lots of tools, lots of technological increases. They don't shake our faith in what is real in this world. We don't put our trust in things that are fallible, that you can turn off with a switch. The power shuts down, AI is dead. It's not something to put your faith in. And don't confuse the two. Don't confuse it. We're not talking about AI as being something that we put faith in. So don't treat it like it is. It is just a tool, and we manage tools. So that's where I'll leave it. I hope this was helpful. Let me know. And if you don't want to see it, do you think we should ignore the sustainability conference? Let me know, because there's more, and I can bring it and we can have a conversation about it. It's interesting to me. I think it's of value and important to Alaskans as we move forward. So I'm going to bring you more. Yeah. The very first cars had to have someone 60 feet in front of them with a red flag. Yeah. When we transitioned from the horse and the buggy to an automobile and speed started picking up, people were like, how are we ever going to survive traveling so fast? Anyway, let's just keep our sanity as we're dealing with things, and deal with the facts, and let the drama float down the river and just focus on the facts. All right. Have a good night, everyone. Have a good Tuesday night. We will see you tomorrow, 7 p.m. Senate Resources should have kicked off their committee. So we'll check in and see what happened with Senator Stedman and the crew on Senate Resources. I'm sorry, Senate Resource. Senate Finance. Senate Finance. I've got the Senate Resources on my tongue because of how much time I've spent there. Senate Finance will have kicked off tomorrow. So we will check in and see what they have accomplished. Okay, until then, we'll see you later. Have a good night.